Hi, second grade, Miss Fryvogel here. Today you will need your pencil and a notebook or a piece of paper. You're going to be learning about sequencing today. Just as a reminder to you, the plot are the key events that happen in a story. And sequencing is the order that those events happen. On your sheet of paper, you're going to be drawing a graphic organizer. It can take up the whole piece of paper, and it's going to look like this. So it has 4 rectangles, one labeled first, one labeled next, one labeled then, and one labeled last. Please go ahead, pause the video, and get this graphic organizer drawn. When you're done, hit play, and we will begin with our story. All right, our story today is called Mixed Up Day. While I read out loud, please use your finger to track and read either aloud as well or in your head. We're going to find out what goes wrong for Danny on Mixed Up Day. It all started at breakfast. The milk jumped out of the jug and flowed all over the table and all over me. I barely had time to clean up the table and put on a clean shirt. On the way to school, I saw myself in a store window. Bedhead! My hair was sticking up to the sky on one side, and the shirt I had on did not match my pants. At school, I headed right to the water fountain so I could wet down my hair. I pushed the button. Nothing happened. I pushed again and looked closely to see what was wrong. All of a sudden, the water splurted into my face. My hair was fixed, sort of, but now my shirt was soaked. I slid into my desk, hoping no one would notice. Mr. Torres looked right at me. Oh, Danny, tomorrow is Mixed Up Day. Danny had a pretty mixed up day, right? We're going to go through our graphic organizer and put those events in order and look at the sequencing of the story. So we're going to think about our graphic organizer. Let's go up. What we're going to fill in is the square that says first. So let's think about the first thing that happened to Danny. Let me reread paragraph 1. Please follow along again. It started at breakfast. The milk jumped out of the jug and flowed all over the table and all over me. I barely had time to clean up the table and put on a clean shirt. So what do you think we should put in the graphic organizer for the first thing that happened to Danny? Take a second and think about it. Danny spilled milk all over his shirt, right? That's the first thing that happened. Next, let's go back down. Danny spilled milk all over his shirt. Next, let's go back down. Let's look at paragraph 2. What happened in paragraph 2? I'll reread it. On the way to school, I saw myself in a store window. Bedhead! My hair was sticking up to the sky on one side, and the shirt I had on did not match my pants. The 2 things happen next, right? He looks in the store window and sees that his hair is sticking up, and he also notices that his shirt and his pants don't match. So Danny looks in a window and sees his bed, head, and let's say mix-matched clothes. Mix-matched. First, Danny spilled milk all over his shirt. Next, Danny looks in a window and sees his bed head and mixed matched clothing. All right, let's look at what happens then. Paragraph number 3. I will reread it. At school, I headed right to the water fountain so I could wet down my hair. I pushed the button. Nothing happened. I pushed again and looked closely to see what was wrong. All of a sudden, the water splurted into my face. My hair was fixed, sort of, but now my shirt was soaked. Then, graphic organizer, what should we put? What happened next in the story? Danny got water all over his shirt. So first he gets milk on it, then he sees that his shirt doesn't match, and then he gets water all over it. Not a very good day. We have one more rectangle to fill in. Let's read our last paragraph. Paragraph number 4. I slid into my desk, hoping no one would notice. Mr. Torres looked right at me. Oh, Danny, tomorrow is mixed-up day, not today. What's the last thing that happens in our story? Go ahead and pause and fill in the last rectangle of our graphic organizer. And when you hit play, we will review what the last thing that happened to Danny was. Okay, and the last thing that you should put is something similar to Danny's teacher tells him tomorrow is mix-up day, right? That's the last thing that happens. He goes into his class, sits down, and the teacher says, oh, Danny, tomorrow's the day that you should be mixed up. So let's look back at our graphic organizer. This helps with our sequencing or understanding the order of events in our story. We know that first, Danny spilled milk all over his shirt at breakfast. Next, Danny looks in a window and sees his bedhead in mixed-matched clothing. Then, Danny got water all over his shirt. And last, Danny's teacher tells him tomorrow is mix-up day. So that is the sequencing or the order of events of our story. Okay, so now that we have the sequencing of the story, let's talk a little bit about the plot or the story itself. So we're going to look a little bit deeper into our story. Go ahead and number your paper 1 to 8, and we will begin. Go ahead and pause the video and number your paper 1 through 8. Number 1, 2, and 3, we're using the words in the word bank to complete our sequencing of what happened first, then, and next. So first, Danny spilled the what? Do you remember what he spilled in the morning? Did he spill the water, his hair, or milk? He spilled the milk at the breakfast table. So first, Danny spilled the milk. And that was really easy for us, right? Because we just did the graphic organizer for sequencing. Then he had a problem with his, we want to say water or hair. Next, he had a problem with his hair, right? Because he looked into the window of the store and saw that his hair was all messed up. The only one we have left is next, he got sprayed with water at the water fountain. Let's think a little bit about Danny's character. What did Danny look like when he sat down in his desk for number 4? Let's think of how we could describe what Danny looked like. You remember, Danny was all wet, right? When he came into his classroom, it was right after he got sprayed with the water. So we could say Danny was wet from the water fountain. Go ahead and pause if you need to write number 4 down. Number 5, you're going to do on your own. Have you ever had a mixed up day? Write about it. This is a great time to pause the video, write a couple sentences about any of the mixed up days you've had. Maybe you woke up like Danny and your hair was a mess, so you tried to fix it and you got water all over yourself. Or maybe you were running really late and like Danny, your clothing didn't match, so your shirt didn't match your pants. Or your pants were inside out or on backwards. So for number 5, take a couple minutes and write about your mixed up day. Try to do it with our sequencing words. So first, next, then, and last. You can even make a graphic organizer like the one that we made to talk about your mixed up day. When you're done with that, go ahead, hit play, and we will continue. Mixed up day, let's look at number 6. In the first paragraph, it says, the milk jumped out of the jug. What does this mean? Does this mean that the milk unscrewed the cap and jumped out of the jug ready to go? Not quite, right? We could say that it means that the milk spilled out of the jug. We know it spilled pretty quickly, so let's say the milk quickly spilled out of the jug, right? And went right onto the table and eventually got on Danny's shirt. Number 7, how does Danny notice the problem with his hair and shirt? Let's go back. If you remember, the picture for our story is Danny noticing his hair and his shirt. If you remember from the story itself, where does it say that Danny noticed that? Use the picture if you need a little bit of help to remember. He notices the problem with his hair and shirt in the reflection of a store window, right? So let's say he notices it in the reflection of a store window. He's walking to school, and in the window, he sees that his hair is a little messed up and that his shirt and pants don't match. Go ahead and pause to get caught up. We have 4 more to go, and they are true or false questions. So we're going to write T for true or false next to each of the sentences. So this is going to get us thinking about the sequencing and the plot of the story that we read. Our first one, Mr. Torres is Danny's teacher. Is that correct? Let's look back up at the story. This was in paragraph 4. Yep, Mr. Torres looked right at me. That's the name of his teacher. So we're going to put a T for true. Our next one, Danny spilled orange juice on the table. We just talked about this. We said it wasn't orange juice, it was milk. So let's put an F for false because we know that it was milk. Our third one, Danny's dad drove him to school. Well, if he drove him to school, then Danny would not have been able to see his reflection in the window, right? So we know that he was walking to school. So we know that's false. And our last one, the water fountain sprays Danny's shirt. Is that true or false? Let's look back up at our story if we need to. Paragraph 3. It's talking about, yep, Danny's at the water fountain and he soaks his shirt with the water from it. So we know that is true. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed the story about Danny's mixed up day. I will see you soon.